Police Service.
Hello?
Hello?
I was calling about a public disturbance. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. There's a bunch of guys in hiding.
Okay. And you don't know if there's any weapons involved?
I have no idea what these guys. They're going crazy. They're just crazy.
Okay.
Yelling at each other, going nuts.
How old are they?
25, 30, I don't know.
Okay, I'll put a call in.
It was early on the Saturday morning of Thanksgiving weekend 2008, and below freezing, when 21-year-old Dylan Koshman is believed to have left his home in Edmonton and walked into the night wearing jeans and a t-shirt. Going on 9 years later, he has never been seen since. In Edmonton, about 1,500 people are reported missing each year. Since 2008, 12,000 or so missing persons. But few of those cases have remained unsolved as long as the disappearance of Dylan Koshman. It all started on October 10th, 2008, at this rented house on the city's south side, a bachelor pad for 3 first cousins. The eldest was 30-year-old Colin DeMasson. His roommates were his brother Nick, 23, and the recent arrival, their 21-year-old cousin Dylan Koshman from Saskatchewan, who'd come to Edmonton to find his future.
I think he just wanted to experience a bigger city. He's never lived away from home, right? He had cousins living up here too.
Dylan's mother is Melanie Alex.
Well, he wanted to get out and have adventure, I think. He wanted to, start a life and find a career or a trade that he would be happy with.
And things seemed to be going Dylan's way when he found a job as an apprentice pipe fitter. What's more, Dylan had a new girlfriend.
We met on White Ave, just at a bar. So yeah, we met and just started dancing and talking, and yeah, we just became friends and hung out all the time.
Aaron Huff was a local college student.
Yeah, he was sweet and funny and kind of shy sometimes.
Before long, Aaron was spending a lot of time at the house Dylan shared with his cousins. But though he was rooming with family, there was trouble brewing.
Towards the end, there was like some tension. I think a lot of it had to do with because I was over there all the time, and then Colin thought that maybe Dylan should pay extra money because I was there all the time. And then so they were kind of arguing about that, but it didn't seem like that big of a deal. But Dylan did want to move out of there, like within the last couple months. Then he just wasn't that happy.
And it was about to go from bad to worse. After a day of drinking on Thanksgiving weekend, his older cousin Colin demanded that Dylan move out. Later, Colin told police he thought he might be attacked by Dylan and another cousin. Indeed, a fight did break out amongst them. Dylan's Aunt Gillian Volk says Colin told her what happened next.
And he wanted Dylan out then. He says, you can get your shit in and get out of here. And then they say that Colin and Dylan, they started with pushing and shoving in the kitchen.
Gillian says according to Colin, they then crashed into the stove. When Dylan went missing, she wondered if that might have left him dazed and confused.
Did Dylan hit his head, have a brain bleed? We might find him, right? If he did walk out the door and, was wandering around aimlessly.
Colin told police that afterwards Dylan walked out of the house. His brother Nick and the visiting cousin said so too.
Edmonton Police Service.
It's 4 o'clock in the morning. There's a bunch of guys in hiding.
Okay.
This 911 call came in after 4 a.m. that night. A neighbor reporting loud noises that sounded like people beating each other.
11825, code 6.
But police didn't respond until hours later, and when they did arrive, there was no answer at the door, and they left. That night, Dylan's girlfriend Erin had been texting him about coming over.
Like, I think our last exchange was something like, I said I might come there, because I was out with my friends. I said I might come there, leave the door unlocked. And he said, okay. And then it was close to 3:30 when I called a couple times, and it just rang and went to voicemail. So I just assumed he had gone to sleep.
About that same time, Dylan also messaged his brother Derek, sounding desperate.
So he wrote to me on MS Messenger. And he said, what's your number?
But after that, there were no more messages from Dylan. And for Erin, no answer as she kept calling his house. When his cousin Colin DeMasson finally picked up the phone late Saturday, Dylan had been missing for the better part of 24 hours. She says Colin told her Dylan wasn't home and he wouldn't let her come over to pick up her things. By Thanksgiving Monday, Erin had encountered one dead end after another.
I called some hospitals to see if maybe he had been hurt and was in the hospital, and they didn't have any record of that. And I tried calling the police. I think I called the remand center to see if maybe he had been arrested, and they said they couldn't give me any information.
On Tuesday, when Dylan didn't go to work, she contacted his brother Derek.
So she wrote me again Tuesday. Derek, he didn't show up for work. Holy, something's going on there.
That Wednesday, they finally told Dylan's mother what had happened. Melanie immediately phoned the Edmonton police, but when they wouldn't accept her missing person report, she called Dylan's cousin Colin.
And I called Colin because the police told me I was not allowed to phone in a missing person from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, when he went missing in Edmonton. And then I phoned Colin and I told him, you have to get on the phone and phone the police and report him missing now.
But the police say Colin DeMasson never phoned to tell them Dylan had disappeared. By the time Melanie arrived in Edmonton, her son had been gone for almost a week. Friends and relatives joined her, in all 19 of them, with one mission: find Dylan.
Could you take one of these flyers and maybe take a look? My son's been missing for a week.
They met at the house Dylan shared, set up a command center, and began to search. Many volunteers they didn't even know.
And complete strangers were coming out and they would come into our house and okay, we are going with this group, and they would give us their time, and it was absolutely amazing.
Their initial impression of the Edmonton police was not so positive.
They just stopped in to see what we were doing, and they were quite amazed to see our whole camp set up there, with, thinking we were going to turn around and go home, and we didn't.
So these were just the local officers, the people assigned to that neighborhood at first.
I had one officer that asked me, any new information? I said, you tell me. What do you mean you're asking me if we're, handing out posters,
Before long, missing persons investigators from the Edmonton Police Service were assigned to the case.
No information one way or the other what happened to Dylan after he left that residence.
Those original detectives were Jim Gurney and Sean Jenkinson.
So Dylan had been missing about a week, and we met with the family, and they had a command center set up. So it's different. I mean, it's nice to have families that are actively involved.
The police organized their own searches with police dogs, but they found no sign of Dylan, though they did locate his wallet with ID and bank card in a neighbor's yard. Wherever he was, he had no access to his money. There was never any further activity in his accounts or on his phone. Eventually, the searching stopped.
What it was explained to me by the detectives is they can't go out and just randomly do searches without probable cause or a direction. That's what he told me, because they don't even know what direction he went at. To go and do searches, it costs money.
Patience can be a virtue in missing persons cases. In Edmonton, 98% are resolved, the majority within 24 hours. But as Dylan Koshman's disappearance dragged on, investigators came to believe he somehow had died, most likely in an accident.
I thought there was a strong likelihood of an exposure scenario based on the circumstances, because in my experience as a police officer, given the weather, the clothing, the alcohol consumption, I've been part of investigations like that. I thought there was a strong likelihood of that.
But as the days turned to weeks, then months, now years, Dylan's body was never found. And for one family member, there were doubts almost from the beginning. Dylan's Aunt Gillian had questions. Why did his roommate and cousin Colin never report him missing, even after Dylan's mother insisted he do so? And she says there was other puzzling behavior. Colin's decision to ignore the search and go skydiving instead. The family meeting with the police in which he gave a theory about how Dylan might have been killed.
Colin stood in the background and he goes, well, you know, this is Edmonton and people go missing all the time and bodies could be dumped in construction sites. And like, I'm sorry, but right now I've got goosebumps again. And I'm thinking, we all, even the police officer, we turned and we looked at Colin like, because like I said, at that point we were hoping and still believing we were going to find him alive. And I'm thinking, if you're even thinking that way, how could you have not gotten involved earlier?
Again, how do you look at something like that?
We put weight in it. I mean, it's obviously odd. We're not immune to it. We want to ask them about it, but at the end of the day, it's not a smoking gun for us.
No smoking gun, some believe, because for almost 9 years, the Edmonton police may have mistakenly investigated the disappearance of Dylan Koshman, who might not be a missing person at all, but the victim of a homicide, as you'll see when we come back.
I think that in this case, we have people who haven't been upfront with us. We have people who have lied to the police. I think we have people who have lied to family members. And I think we need to get to the bottom of it. We need to really find out what happened to Dylan and bring closure for this family.
You're gonna be 3. Your name's Dylan.
Yeah.
I love somebody.
Yes, I do.
I love somebody.
Yes, I do.
I love somebody. And that somebody's you.
For all of his 21 years, Dylan Koshman was the darling of family and friends, according to his dad Dan and mother Melanie.
He was the entertainer.
On the right
He'd like
hand,
to get everybody laughing, even if it meant teasing someone, you know, in the family to get them going or whatever. He was close to a lot of people.
This is from a graduation party, perhaps the last video ever of Dylan.
I am proud to graduate the same year as you. And that's all I have to say.
A year later, Thanksgiving weekend 2008, at this house in Edmonton, an alcohol-fueled family gathering burst into violence. When it was over, Dylan Koshman had disappeared. For nearly 9 years, the case was assigned to the Edmonton Missing Persons Unit, considered an unexplained absence, not a crime. But that has changed, in large part thanks to this man. Bill Clark is a legendary Edmonton detective, senior staff sergeant with the Homicide Unit. Now, for the first time, he shared with us that homicide investigators have taken over the Koshman case. Clark says it's clear that Dylan's disappearance should have been investigated as a homicide long ago.
One, if someone just wanders off or goes missing, we usually find him. Okay, he's never been found. Dylan's body's never been found. There's been various stories about that. If you get hit by a car and you wander off, you're going to be found somewhere. It just doesn't make sense. Just in totality, reviewing the whole file, reviewing the circumstances of the night he went missing, it stinks, frankly. And there's a strong suspicion that it's a homicide, and I think we need to take it on.
He maintains that the passing years could actually be an advantage.
There's people out there still living with it 9 years later. You hope that at some point their conscience gets the hold of them and they actually do come through with the truth.
Clark has picked veteran investigator Al Elliott to head the case.
Detective Al Elliott is my most senior detective in my unit. He's a thorough, competent, methodical investigator, and he's been the one assigned to this case, and I think that we're going to see some positive results.
Dylan is still missing, and the circumstances surrounding his disappearance are very suspect.
So what would you say to the family? They'll watch this. You may be speaking to them here before you speak to them in person. What would you say?
I'm committed to finding some sort of resolution, some sort of solution as to what happened to Dylan. And that's my
That's my promise to them.
But if their long, fruitless search for Dylan brought the Koshman family together, suspicion and nagging doubts now threaten to break them apart. Dylan's Aunt Gillian believes that his oldest cousin Colin knows more than he said about what happened at the house. Remember, Dylan was there with Colin, Colin's brother Nick, and 2 others that night.
The impression was that the cousins, Colin and Nick, weren't taking an active role in looking for
No, and right from the
Dylan.
beginning, they said to my sister Melanie, well, I'm not his keeper. Like, you know, instead of being concerned where he is or trying to find him, letting him leave, you would think that they'd say, come back for your stuff tomorrow, right? You know, or something, right? Or where are you going? Go downstairs, go to bed and cool off. You know, we'll talk in the morning.
But that didn't happen. According to one 911 call, a neighbor saw a man being beaten by others. Gillian says later she found a blood-soaked roll of paper towels. There was a lot of fighting that night. And others in the house said that Colin and Dylan were both responsible for the fight they got into. No one reported witnessing a killing. Through it all, Dylan's immediate family members have spoken up for their cousin Colin.
I'm only putting myself in his shoes that this is horrible, and the way things have went down since then. And you know, he was the last person. He kicked him out of the house. How are you going to feel doing that, right? Like it's an unfortunate situation that he's in, and a lot of people look to him, I'm sure, but I don't.
You're not blaming the roommates?
Not one bit. Yeah, and I can say that with 100% guarantee.
And their mother, Melanie, agrees.
I didn't want to believe that, you know, there was problems and fights, you know. This is family. We're all family.
Annually, the family holds a vigil in Edmonton, still spreading the word. Most recently, it included Dylan's cousins, Colin and Nick, both of whom refused our request for an interview. For almost 9 years, they've tried billboards, a psychic, and kept asking, have you seen Dylan? Bill Clark of the Edmonton Police Service believes they've been on the wrong track, that Dylan isn't a missing person, but a homicide victim. And like so many others, there may well be a family connection.
We would simply like you to respond to a couple of the things that were said in the course of our story.
Okay. Their conscience gets the hold of them, and they actually do.
We showed Dylan's parents, Dan and Melanie, what Bill Clark had to say about now investigating their son's disappearance as a homicide.
I mean, let's face it, any homicide investigation, we're looking at the last people who saw that person alive. Who is it? It's people close to this family. You know, it's cousins of this family. We're going to be looking at them, absolutely.
When we last spoke, you and Tara and Derek were quite clear that you did not believe that a family member was involved in that way. When you see that, does it change your mind?
Because I don't want it to be any relative that would harm another person, but I'm scared. I'm scared for everybody. I want to find Dylan. I want to find out what happened to him. But it's going to hurt so many people.
Dan, have you had second thoughts about that?
Not at all. No, that doesn't change my mind at all. I don't believe that they had anything to do with it, no.
Basically, what he seems to be saying is, question number one for a homicide investigator is, who was the last person to see the victim alive? Who was closest to him? It's more often than not a family member.
Mm-hmm. Those are natural steps, right?
So when you've grappled with that over the years, how have you handled it?
I'm angry. I'm very angry.
37 years a cop, this could be one of Bill Clark's final cases. After the family has spent so long hoping Dylan still would be found alive. Now, for better or worse, Clark hopes at least they'll finally know the truth.
You know, ultimately that would be the best for the family. Dylan is alive and well somewhere. Personally, I don't believe that at all. I think Dylan was killed the night he went missing. Can I prove it yet? No. Will we prove it? I hope so. I do believe we will.